Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Ex-Fugitive Factor. I'm your host, Jeremiah Sitterson. Thank you for watching. Today we have a very serious episode, so if you're not sitting down, go ahead and take a seat because I'm sitting down for this one. We're going to be talking about the DC takeover. But before we get into the major headlines, we're going to do a segment of story time with White House Down. It's actually going to be our first segment, and it's going to give you guys some background on me so that you understand where I'm coming from with my opinions on these topics. So real quick, story time with White House Down. Where did that even come from? Well, I got the nickname White House Down after my second extradition. I was extradited twice on the felony case that I caught in 2015. That was a crime that was completely out of character. We're not going to get into the details on that. However, during the prosecution, the charge was wrongfully enhanced, which led to me being a fugitive, which led to this show. Now, I was extradited twice. 8 days in the back of a van shackled, and then the other time was 6 days in the back of the van shackled. I could do an entire episode just on those extraditions. They were quite interesting, but we're not going to get into that today either. How I got the nickname White House Down: I arrived at the county jail. My first day there, my bunkie says to me, he's like, hey, you have court tomorrow morning in cell, whatever the cell was, the number, like 201. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? I don't have court tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, you have court with the commission tomorrow. And I was like, well, who is the commission? He tells me that the commission is the leaders of all the gangs that are in the pod. They have something called the commission where they paperwork to make sure that you're not a sex offender. And if you are, they tax you or they put you on the door and kick you out of the dorm or beat you up, whatever it is they do. So I was like, all right, I'll I'll play along and I'll go play court with these guys and see what's going on. So the next day I report to this court, and it's about 6 dudes. They all have their shirt off, like, they're all pretty big guys, tatted up, and they want me to walk in the cell. So I walk in the cell and they're all standing around me. And I said, hold on a second. I take my shirt off and they're like, state your name for the record. So I state my name. They wanted to know the charges, asked me if I had my paperwork. I did. And during that court session, I explained to them, that I went to DC and the White House and all this stuff. So these guys end up nicknaming me White House Down, which over time was shortened to White House over the years, and then even evolved into OG White House in some circles and within the Florida Department of Corrections. So that's how I got the nickname White House Down. Now, quick story with the commission. So I end up pitching the whole commission on, listen, you don't have anybody representing the neutrons, meaning you're neutral. You're not in any type of gang. You have no affiliations, which was the case with me. At first, they were like, no, no, no. And then eventually they liked the idea. So they called me in one day. They said, we just got a guy that came in and we know that he's got sex charges. They said, if you want to be on the commission, you got to go into his dorm and get a bag of coffee from him and tell him he's going to pay a bag of coffee a week. Otherwise, whatever. So I was like, oh, okay, no problem. So I go in there and the guy's pissing when I walk in. Took a quick glance, and the dude had an abnormally large male member area, which, by the way, I don't have a gay bone in my body, but it just happened that I seen it. And this guy was in there for penetration, young, 13, bad. So it made me sick. So anyways, I, politely explained to him that I'm the nice guy. I'm the guy he wants to deal with. And that he had just gotten like a $70 or $80 bag of canteen. So I explained to him that he was going to keep one bag of coffee. I was going to take the rest of the bag. And it was 2 bags of coffee a week moving forward, and if he didn't like it, you know, he was just going to go to the next dorm, and actually other consequences, and it was just going to be ongoing, and he wasn't going to be able to enjoy his canteen anyways, because no matter where he went in the jail, these guys had people. So anyways, he agrees. I come out of the cell, I got the whole bag. Now they sent me in there for 1 bag of coffee, which is $6.50. I came out of there with over $65 worth of canteen. So they were like, White House, what are you doing? What are you doing? You just took his whole bag. I'm like, listen, that's, you know, and they were like, no, he's gonna go check in, and then, you know, anyways, they were scared, but so they ended up returning the bag to him after I took my cut, which was about $25. But they returned most of it to him. I don't know why. We're gonna fast forward a bit. And now I'm in prison. I just got there. I'm at the reception center. And my bunkie is one of the highest ranking Latin kings on the compound. We both got there within like 2 days of each other. This guy, within 24 hours, had everything you could want in there. Clothes, custom clothes, just anything. And he was giving me stuff like, here's a pair of boots, here's this, here's that. Anyways, very interesting time, and I'll get into some more stories during this short period at this reception center later. But anyways, this guy wouldn't go to bed at night without story time with White House Down, so I'd sit there, I'd tell him my stories, and he enjoyed them that much that he called them story time with White House Down. So that's how the name came. To me smoking the Brazilian cigar that's in downtown St. Pete. That is like in the 5 minutes that I actually became a fugitive. I received a call from the person that was delivering the 30-something page document that I was submitting to the courts when I decided to abscond. And yeah, I received the call that they were walking into the courtroom, and I sparked the Brazilian and said, well, this isn't where I thought my life was going, but basically catch me if you can. You know, I'm all in at that point. But with that being said, this other picture here, this is me on a first date, blind date at the White House. In between the 2 times I turned the White House 2 times, was there 3 times as a fugitive. And there's a few other interesting things that took place, like while I was a fugitive, that were abnormally interesting. So now I want to skip ahead towards the end of my time as a fugitive, where I spent several months living in Washington, D.C. Primary objective to find someone there within the government that had enough pull to contact the county that I was being prosecuted by. There was some way that I could work for the government in exchange for not doing time in prison, especially since my charge had been wrongfully enhanced. And I was facing life in prison when the maximum for the crime that I actually committed was 15 years. And that was the only offer on the table. And I had come to the conclusion that to sign 15 years for something that habitual offenders were getting 2 years for, that were like gang members, and I'm watching them in court get 2 years. But my offer's 15 years. I felt like to accept that would have been like textbook mental illness, honestly. So I had to find a way to try to modify the situation to make it a little bit more fair. Yeah, I was basically looking for a backdoor way out. of the situation that I put myself in that I did deserve to be punished for. So, anyways, I'm in DC. Windsor Inn is where I was staying a lot. Um, it's in an interesting area, and there's some pretty interesting activity that goes on in that area. And this is just a weird side note. They used to give me a suite there, and I wouldn't like book a suite, but I was a frequent flyer, so but it was a little weird. I feel like that in retrospect that there was surveillance in that suite, which would make sense given the location of the Windsor Inn and its proximity to other um, establishments. While I was in DC, I eventually ran out of money, and I had a place to stay in Pennsylvania, to stay in Florida, but I did not have a place to stay in DC, and I was pretty much out of funds. So I had two choices: either continue the mission and find a way to survive, or I retreat and regroup and go somewhere where I can stay. And I decided to continue with the mission. So I stayed in a homeless shelter in DC. This is under the Trump administration. However, Obama's policies were in place with regards to homelessness, which is something else we're going to talk about that Trump's addressing, and I'm going to give my honest at. But under Obama, I have to give Obama credit. Like, as far as it helping me, it was very beneficial to me. The facilities were clean. They were like work release centers. You had thick mattresses. After you stayed there a number of consecutive days in a row, I think it was like 16 or something like that, or 30. You had a large locker. You could take a shower. It was, it honestly, I mean, for a average American that's never been incarcerated or been in the system, such as myself at that time, which I had just had very brief encounters within the last year or so. Prior to that, I had never been in a jail cell in my life. Um, it was definitely a shock the initial few times, but now with me having done 5 years in prison, a total of around 1 year in confinement, again mostly undeserved, I consider the living conditions at this homeless shelter to be well above average at the time. Now, they provided food. I mean, the whole city was set up to assist the homeless. They gave you free clothes, all kinds of stuff. But anyways, so Obama did benefit me in that way, and I will say this, and if you've watched my other content, you're a Trump supporter, and you know that I'm a Republican. But the Obama the Secret Service that I had contact with under the Obama administration, the first time I turned myself in, I did have a better experience with them than I had with the Trump administration the last time I turned myself in, which is something that we're going to talk about possibly too in this episode. But and there's other factors involved with that, and there was a lot of timing issues involved with that too. So I was actually, but we're not going to get into that right now. So, anyways, while in DC, it was overtly apparent that 90% of DC residents that live there were Muslim, and I'm all for religious freedom, and I respect the Muslim religion, and this is going to piss a lot of people. I actually respect the Muslim religion more than I respect the majority of the world's Christianity. Like, for instance, Americanized Christianity, I'm not a huge fan. I believe in God, but I don't. Let's just say I've had a lot of bad experiences, and I've had negative experiences with Muslim groups, but I've had positive experiences with Muslim individuals fairly consistently. So it's not that I have anything against Muslims, but it did feel very it it was very bizarre, because here I am in the nation's capital, and crime is through the roof. Gangsters are running wild. And this is coming from somebody that spent 2 weeks in Northwest 2 block, which is one of the highest security blocks in DC Federal Detention Center. So, my security level was really high, and it really shouldn't have been. And even the staff there was like, "This is kind of weird that you're being put in there." But been around a few blocks, and being in those bad areas where the homeless shelter was located, you know, it was a real concern in 2017. That's 8 years ago. So 8 years ago it was bad. I can only imagine how bad it is now. But yeah, it was just bizarre. And it did feel like a takeover, and the underlying hatred for Trump was just overwhelming, and it wasn't what I was expecting, and it did feel something felt off. Let's just put it that way. Now, with that being said, there was a Muslim that was, I believe, a retired postal worker or something like that that I met. This is before I was in the homeless shelter, and um, I don't believe he had any type of nefarious motives when offering me a place to stay. He knew I was in an Airbnb, and I disclosed to him that, yeah, I was running out of money. Like, I only have like another week left, and I was about to get another week. And he's like, well, why don't you he's like, you can crash in my house for a day or two to save you a little bit of money, by the way, basically. And I stayed at his house for like 2 days. I don't think that he was expecting anything in return. uh so I mean, he was a genuine good dude, Muslim guy, but African American, like traditional African American, but Muslim. But you could tell that the Muslim religion was heavily pushed and embedded intentionally into the district. And then there was another guy who I actually got arrested at the homeless shelter. And when I got miraculously released, DC federal prison on a Saturday, um, U.S. Marshals came and picked me up. Only me. My bunkie, who had been in there almost 5 years, which is the max you can be in there fighting a case, he he said he never saw anybody go to court on a Saturday, but the judge had said that he was tired of signing the extensions, because it's a 3-day extension in the district, whereas in most states it's, I believe, 10 days they have to come and get you, or 12 days to come and get you. And then they get an extension for another 10 or 12 days. But in the district, it's every 3 days. So this judge had already been, this had been in front of him like 6 times, and he was done with it. He said if they wanted you that bad, they'd come get you, and he cut me loose. So when he cut me loose, I'm in sandals, like I'm in like, my nighttime attire, just gym shorts and a t-shirt. And all of my property is at the second precinct in DC. And I can't, like, I'm still a fugitive, and they even told me that when they released me, like, you still have warrants. So I had to, and because of the time of day that they released me, by the time I got out of there, I couldn't get all the way across the district uh, to get my stuff from the police station. So I was pretty much stranded. I'm talking about wallet, shoes, actual clothes. It's all at the precinct. My marijuana, which they gave back to me, by the way, it's all at the precinct. So anyways, I end up meeting this other guy that looked like he was from like Haiti or something to that effect, and he was also Muslim. And I explained my situation to him, and he said, come with me. Now, this guy was peddling, like, he was peddling something. I don't even remember what it was. It was like flowers, or I don't even remember what it was. We were in Chinatown. He's peddling something. And he tried to sell me something, and we ended up talking. And he says, come to my house. I got clothes. I'll hook you up. Um, I got you. So this guy, we end up going to his house, which actually was 3/10 off of like one of the interstate entrances into the city, and he had like enough clothes to clothe 30 people, and for a week, and they were all like new, and it was, I don't know if it was stolen, I don't know where he got the stuff. He probably got it for free because of how supportive of homeless people the district was at the time due to Obama's policies. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm not saying that as a good thing, because it's bad and good. It, it it was really good in a lot of ways, but at the same time, offering so much assistance doesn't incentivize these, people to get jobs and get off the street. So but they offered medical. I mean, they offered housing if you stayed at the homeless shelter. I think it was like every day for 6 months. Don't quote me, I don't remember, but um, it would, you weren't homeless if you were homeless, as long as you were willing to um, go through their little programs. It's not even programs. It was there was no requirements. It was just you had to show up. But it enabled me to continue to operate in DC and not appear homeless, and get a good night's rest, get showered, wear clean clothes, not have to carry my bags around, and I was able to maneuver. And again, like, that's a good thing and that's a bad thing. Was I a threat to anyone? No. But at the same time, I was an extraditable fugitive, and I was able to sustain my, like, I mean, the programs assisted a fugitive. So as far as the Muslims go and DC, like, the overwhelming sentiment against Trump was really alarming. um and you could tell that the programming was heavy in that area, and it had been for many decades. And the truth is that DC is, many areas are very, very dangerous. Northwest too, like, almost everyone in there had a triple murder or better. There were very few exceptions, me being one of them, which is why even the staff was like, we don't understand why your security level's so high, why you're in here. um it was, that there's a lot of killing that goes on. It's violent, and I've witnessed it. And I've witnessed, I mean, it's bad. So, and that was 7 years ago. So I can imagine what it looks like now after the Biden administration. But yeah, who knows what it looked like after the Biden administration. So at the end of the day, do I think what Trump's doing in DC is a good idea and that it's justified? I personally do. If you're an American that's never been to DC, or you haven't been to DC in 20 years, like, it was unrecognizable. So Trump's federal takeover of DC, is it warranted? Is it necessary? I can't say for absolute certain, because I haven't been to DC in 8 years. But what I can say is that when I was in DC 8 years ago, it was a little scary. It was off. Didn't feel like America's capital should feel like. It felt like I was in a foreign country. Belief systems were very radical. You could tell that uh, you could tell that the demographic had been heavily propagandized. If I don't even know, but they'd been, there'd been a lot of programming going on in there. And on another note with that, I found myself as a fugitive, like, coincidentally, in the living room of 5 FBI agents that lived together, and I met them through a online um, platform and I met them for work. I was going to do landscaping work for them, and I got along really well with the main guy. We were talking. Eventually, he disclosed to me that he's police. So I asked him what kind of police, and we do some process of elimination, and we end up at, he's the FBI, so he shows me his credentials. He was a senior agent in the FBI out of the J. Edgar Hoover building. I had not disclosed my full name to this gentleman yet. Very happy with my work. He offers me a ride to my Airbnb. I said, well, listen, if you want to take me to Chinatown, because we're in Capitol Hill at the time, I said, if you want to take me to Chinatown, that's cool. So I hop in his vehicle and we're headed to Chinatown, and we're just, we're talking, and the topic of Comey comes up. He had just left office and they were trying to get his replacement, and he either said 8 or 9 people down the line had rejected the job because they didn't want to deal with Trump. But I ended up sticking up for Trump to him, and he wasn't particularly amused by it. But we shook hands when we parted ways. He dropped me off in Chinatown, and he had no idea that I was a fugitive. And by the way, I even told the United States Secret Service, because I turned myself in less than 12 hours later after this conversation. I told the United States Secret Service that I thought that they should suggest him for the FBI director, because like this guy, we had a lot in common. For those of you that don't know, I was going to go into the FBI. That's why I took 2 courses of Mandarin in college. That was my original plan. But unfortunately, when it came time for me to apply, I was not eligible because I had already taken anabolic steroids. It was it was pretty much moot at that point. So me and this guy, we had a lot in common. Yeah, I called him years later, and he knew exactly who I was, and he was not amused that time either. Um, but he's not a bad guy. I called him while I was in work release, believe it or not, to apologize to him for not showing up to work for him that Tuesday, because I had already had a prior agreement and I had to turn myself in at the White House at that time. On a side note, when it comes to federal officers, particularly the FBI and particularly Russiagate and, the sentiment and this and that, I don't think that the Trump administration should prosecute the majority of the managerial staff within the FBI that were biased. Even though they were biased, you got to look at them. They went into the FBI more than likely with good intention and 20 years of indoctrination. And I'm not just referring to Trump, because Trump was, fairly recent. When you're in an organization like that, like, you can be a strong individual and be a decisive individual and also um, fall prey to a herd mentality. And then also you're legitimately programmed to take orders. Like, you do what you're told, like, because there's a hierarchy in the government. You don't move up that hierarchy unless you do what you're supposed to do. So as far as the Trump administration going after, like, a handful of key players, that's above my pay grade. That's for them to decide what to do. But with regards to, like, I wouldn't go crazy with that, because if they were given the complete opposite orders and it was pro-Trump, they would have been carried out in the same fashion. So yeah, where do I stand on the DC takeover? I stand that it's a good idea and that it's well overdue. It should have been done a long time ago. He should have done it under the first administration. And when you look at these photos we got here, like, if you look in the top left corner, those police officers, they have their back to the crowd, and that's actually a MAGA rally. But then you've got these other situations where they're protesting, and I mean, I'm just stating the fact, talking about democratic protests. And here's the other thing, like, I'm friends with a lot of Democrats. I'm actually pretty moderate. I'm not even far right, but I like Trump's style, and we're uniquely positioned with Trump in office right now to do things that otherwise would never get done. Um, and we have a very strong hand globally right now, and we need to keep moving forward. But yeah, him taking control of the district. Yes, I do support Trump's takeover of DC. It's long overdue, and I'm happy that he's doing it. DC needs to be cleaned up. It's a national security risk, because the reality is I've also had run-ins with organizations of not just Muslim religious background, but other religious backgrounds, some of them not as well known. And these organizations were criminal organizations. They were gangs, and they were disguised as religions. And yes, they were practicing the religion, but it was an extremist version. And these things exist everywhere in America, in every city. They exist in every prison and every county jail. So yeah, Trump is doing the right thing here. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow for more news and opinion.